All right. Hi, everyone. Janice Pecoraro here with Weichert Realtors, and I have my partner Joe on the line. Joe is a mortgage broker in our office.
Hi, everybody.
So welcome to Mortgage Monday. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 things that, I found that buyers wish they knew before buying a house or even entering the market. So we're going to go over those things. Let me just share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Janice, I think that with the craziness that's going on with multiple bid situations, we need to be ultra prepared when we're out looking at homes.
Yes, I agree. And I think these things will sort of help people, realize what the process is, because I feel like a lot of times buyers enter the home buying process and sometimes they don't know the whole process of, what happens from start to finish. So this will sort of break through some myths, but also maybe help you feel like, as you're going through the process, that some of these things are normal, So with March Madness happening next week with basketball, I figured, March Madness in the market, in the real estate market, is actually a thing right now. It truly does feel like madness because, you see people putting, bids in, and then there's, 12, 15 other offers at the same time. And sometimes your client gets the house and sometimes they don't. So it sort of feels like, the basketball game where everybody's sort of competing for, the one title, So I thought this little, saying or quote that I found was pretty perfect for what we're going to talk about today.
Janice, I heard a great one last week.
Go ahead.
A couple in Short Hills added to their contract when making an offer that they would pay for a trip for the seller to go to Tahiti for 2 weeks.
That's awesome. Oh my
And
gosh.
they had a timeshare that they owned yearly, and they won the bid because it was so over the top. The seller said, I'm going to get to sell my house and I'm going to get a trip to
Right.
Tahiti. And I thought that us waiving appraisal contingency and not doing a home inspection was good enough. Now,
Up the ante a little bit.
exactly.
Oh my gosh.
This goes to show you when you say madness, you are 100% correct.
Yeah, it truly is. So let's just talk about how to sort of avoid that madness. So first thing, obviously, Joe could sort of speak to this is, sometimes people, when I meet with them, they say they're already pre-approved, and, come to find out that they just did like a Quicken Loan thing or something on the internet that they just happened to come across. And just because you're pre-approved with one lender doesn't mean it's the best lender for you. So my suggestion from a realtor's perspective is that you really should be shopping around for a lender. Don't just take one pre-approval and just go with that, because you might get a better rate or better terms with another lender. So, I mean, Joe, you probably speak
right.
to
You might get better service.
right.
You might feel more comfortable talking to someone like myself who's available 24/7 than dealing with a Bank of America that's only available from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yes.
And you're looking at homes on a Sunday at 3 o'clock at an open house. So
that's true.
The other reason, if you're already approved, to get another pre-approval is you look stronger when you're making your offer and you show a seller that you're qualified by 2 banks. They will feel more comfortable accepting your offer with 2 pre-approvals.
Right. That's true. That's true. And what I found too is, I had a client, I've spoke to this before, but I just think it's so important when we talk about that service piece. I had a client that used, an online lender that was national or, in California or something. And they kept getting bounced around from, person to person. And when we ran into an issue, it delayed, the closing by a week and a half because nobody knew what was going on, because this person was supposed to take care of it, but no one followed up. And they said to me, they were like, we should have really listened to you when you recommended the people that you work with, because we would never do this again. Like, it was horrible. So,
right. Well, sometimes they get stuck. They're too far into the transaction to switch lenders. So they just deal with it and they put up with, the garbage service they're receiving.
Right. It's true. So definitely shop around for a lender. If you obviously want to talk to me or Joe, we can help you out too. The other thing too is what I find when I'm talking to buyers too is a lot of them, they think about like, okay, house price and down payment, but then they forget to factor in sometimes closing costs, They don't realize how much those cost. And then also just, moving, especially if you're selling a house, you might need to rent a pod or a storage unit, especially if you're buying and selling at the same time. You might need to move your stuff from, your house to a transitional place before you close on your new house. So just sort of factor in all of those transitional costs. Even if you're, renting, maybe you can't close by the time your lease ends. Just try to plan for those things, because those things can add up. And just also, plan accordingly, because, I know when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it was very difficult to get a moving company also. So don't do it last minute.
So the number that I like to use is 3.5% to 4% of the purchase price is a good number to set aside for closing costs and incidentals, things that come along that get thrown into a move.
Right.
So if you take a purchase price of $400,000, you should be setting aside $12,000 to $14,000 to be used for closing costs.
That's a good. Yeah, that's good. It's good to know. They don't know, they ask me, and then they realize, like, oh wait, I can't put that much down because I wasn't factoring in, all these other costs that I, realized are part of the process. So that's also important to just talk with your realtor too upfront about what the process is. Like what do you, what is the process from start to finish, so you're aware of what happens. So, all right. And then don't be superficial. So and I don't mean to sound, I don't know, superficial, I guess, when I say this, but what I'm finding a lot right now, and it's tough because maybe I just have a different perspective. So I have to try and think from another person's perspective. But I see a lot of people walk into a house, and because it needs like minor things, they're like, oh, I don't want to buy the house. And I always say to at least my buyers, I say, look for like simple cosmetic things, especially if you don't want to put a lot of money into a house. I totally get it. I'm not asking people to buy a fixer-upper and put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a house. But sometimes people will, they want, they have champagne taste but beer pockets. They want move-in ready, but they can only afford up to 400 or 425, and that market is going to be so tight, for you to be able to find that, and you're going to end up in a bidding war because everybody else wants that. But if you can sort of overlook some of those things and just look for what I think of like good bones, is the house a good house? It just needs a little TLC to bring it up to where it should be. I think it's actually going to help you too in the long run, because now you're not buying the house at its peak price. You're buying it a little under where it should be, and you could actually add value and, create your own equity in the house. So
I think Janice, one of the conversations I'm having with every buyer is you have to be pliable.
yes,
This is not a buyer's market. This is a seller's market like we have never seen before. So you're going to have to overlook the little things if you plan on buying a house.
Right. Right. And even I had a buyer yesterday that I met with, and they said to me, they were like, I guess, I don't know, they've been looking for 2 years, and I guess they weren't super happy with their realtor because they're like, we should have a house already. They're like, but, we were super picky in the beginning. And now in hindsight, we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, all these houses that we were picking apart, we should have just bought, because now we're paying $50,000 more than what we could have paid a year or two ago. So
for less of a house.
Right. So they're like, now, it sort of kicked us because now we're going to pay more and we're not going to get as nice of a house. So, so that's what I mean by don't be super picky. I mean, I think a lot of buyers are realizing that, so they're not, they're waiving inspection things, but just, look for a house that has good bones and that has, potential.
Great.
Don't count those out. So you're definitely going to change your mind during the process. And I can speak to this because just in the past week, I had a young couple coming from Hoboken, and they were like, oh, we want a house and we want this town, and we're open to a couple other towns around it, but this is really what we want. And then as we made a couple offers, and they're just seeing that they have to offer a lot more than what they want to pay, they're like, well, since we're not going to be buying our forever house right now, maybe we'll look at townhouses instead, because and maybe we can get it for a little less, and we're not going to be in this crazy bidding war. And if we're going to move in 3 to 5 years anyway, why are we going to overpay for a house when we can just buy a townhouse and sell that later on?
They did a study, and 9 out of 10 people move out of their first home within the first 7 years because they either outgrow it or they out earn it. So
Yep.
their income becomes better, which means they take the next size up, or the family becomes too big for the starter home.
Right.
So most purchases are not your rest of your life or your home you're going to be in for 40 years.
Right. Exactly. And even, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, but, you know, I'm wondering if we're going to see a lot of buyer's remorse because I think people are so anxious to get into a house that sometimes they're overlooking things that they might need long term. I was telling Joe, last weekend I wrote 2 offers and we submitted them, and then we got, hey, we have multiple offers, give us your final and best. And overnight, the next morning, both of them texted me and they said, you know what? We were thinking about it all last night. We're not comfortable actually going any higher for this house. So let's just rescind our offer because we actually don't want to overpay for this house. And I thought,
Right.
they were so apologetic. They're like, we're so sorry. We don't mean to create more work for you. And I said, listen, this is like a simple thing for me. This takes me like 5-10 minutes. I said, you're buying a house that you're going to live in for a couple years. Like, I want you to be happy with the purchase that you're actually making. So if you think that now, then I don't suggest we move forward. And I think you made the right decision.
And because the market is so crazy, they get caught up in, I don't want to lose again. I
Right.
don't want someone else to beat me out again. This is the 4th house I made an offer on. I'm just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you
Right.
have to be comfortable with the numbers. That's why
Right.
you need to talk payment with a lender when you're making an offer, because I can't tell you how many times it happens. I get a phone call, Joe, figure out our payment. We just got our offer accepted, and now they're in shock when I tell them their payment is
Oh, yeah.
$3,400 a month.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, that's important too. I mean, even just, with changing their mind too, it's just, I think, I feel bad for these buyers because they literally have, like, if you go to an open house, you have maybe 10 minutes to look at the house and decide in the next hour
Right.
whether you're going to buy it or not and make it your forever
On the
home.
biggest decision on the biggest purchase you've made in your life, you have
Right.
10 to 15 minutes to decide.
Right. And that's true because I went to an open house with a client because you couldn't see the house until the open house. And we had a couple other showings lined up. And we went back there this last week for the inspection. And they're like, we're hoping that this house, we remember it the way we thought we did when we made the offer because here we are.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know it's tough because we saw it with a bunch of other people in the house, so
Some people take more time to buy a pair of shoes.
right.
Right?
It's true. So, if you change your mind through the process, know that that's normal. I mean, it's going to happen, especially as you go through the process. You might realize things that you thought were important aren't as important, or things that weren't as important are more important. So that's typical. And then lastly, this is important too, especially when I'm working with first-time home buyers. I think they get freaked out when certain things come up on the inspection. And I always tell them, listen, the home inspector's job is to find anything that could go wrong with the house wrong, because obviously they want to protect you, but they also have to protect themselves. God forbid something does happen. They don't want to say they missed it, So I would say their job is to write everything down. And then, we just have to look at it and see like what's truly important, because they might be minor things that can easily be fixed. But if they're not, and they're major, then that's where you can sort of, negotiate with the seller or back out. So, I don't know if you ever see that with buyers,
Well,
in the lending side.
what I try to do with buyers is I tell them, don't sweat the small stuff.
Right.
The broken light switch in the garage, we can fix that.
Right.
But if the house has a crack in the foundation and it's leaning to the left by 3 feet, we probably don't want to buy that house.
Right.
So that's why hiring a home inspector that is well recommended, someone who's not too over the top and someone who's not too lazy, that's the perfect find.
Right.
And that person's going to spend 2 hours
Right.
looking at that house.
Right. To make you feel comfortable too buying it, knowing that, you're buying a good house. And,
Correct.
I had a buyer where there was something in the foundation where the foundation wall was like bowed in, and, the inspector made it seem like it was this huge issue, but they had, reinforcements and things like that. And she had to bring in a structural engineer to make her feel better about it. And it ended up being fine. They
Good.
replaced the front wall correctly. It's just that from years of it being neglected, it just happened to be like that and settled like that. But, that's something that somebody else would have walked away on, I think,
Yep. Depends how it's handled.
Yeah, exactly. So these are awesome. So that will help. But yeah, so these are just, 5 things that we thought were important as you're going through the whole buying process. It's important to know what the process is like, what's coming up. Obviously, if you have any questions about mortgages and stuff like that, contact Joe. If you have any questions about real estate, contact me. Any final thoughts?
No, I would just say the better prepared you are, the better chance you have of getting that offer accepted.
Right. And maybe we'll talk about that maybe next week about purchasing power too, because I think a lot of people don't know, if you go up a little bit more, what that changes with monthly payments.
It's a great point. Most people don't know that $10,000 in price is only $41 a month. If they knew that, they may be more amenable to making a stronger offer.
That's true. So I think that's important as well.
Okay, we can do that next Monday. We look forward to it.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for
everybody.
watching, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.